Thank you, Senator Young. Just continuing on that line of inquiry, Ms. Stroll, I have heard some people sort of question whether going forward, Iron Dome, as it is currently constituted, will provide significant enough security against rocket attacks emanating from Hamas. Understanding it is still an incredibly effective system, are we also in dialogue with the Israelis as to enhancements or as to other protective measures that we can engage in with them to protect them from future attacks?
Thank you for that question. Yes, we are. We are in constant and consistent dialogue with the Israelis on a variety of issues related to their security needs, including the Iron Dome defense system. Their assessment and our assessment is that it was exceptionally effective in protecting Israeli civilians during Operation Guardian of the Walls. They are seeking this supplemental funding because they support and believe that it saves lives. We also have a variety of other missile defense programs, as well as other programs to support Israel's security needs.
Let me turn to the question of China, because I do want to make sure we right-size China's ambitions in the region. There is no doubt China has an intent to grow their security partnerships in the region. But I also think that they benefit from a world in which the United States has the primary security obligation for a region that right now is much more essential to the delivery of oil to China than to the United States. And so I'd love for one of you to talk a little bit more about what China's real interests in the region are, whether they are actually willing to sort of take over from the United States as the primary security guarantor for especially Gulf nations that export oil to the world, or whether they are sort of looking to use their security assistance as a means to grow political partnerships with countries there, well, frankly, hoping to maintain a U.S. security umbrella under which they live and benefit.
Thank you for that question. It truly is the question of the day. China has shown no interest in, nor a capability to contribute to regional security and stability, and we ask our partners to consider that. We know that China and our Middle Eastern partners will have a commercial relationship. We have a commercial relationship with China. The Secretary Blinken has said our relationship with China will be competitive when it should be, collaborative when it can be, and adversarial when it must be. The common denominator here is that we need to engage China from a position of strength. And security cooperation will undoubtedly play a role there in our response to strategic competition in the Middle East, but also beyond the Middle East globally. It requires us to work with allies and partners, not denigrate them, because our combined weight is much harder for China to ignore. So as Dastrol mentioned, there are certain categories of cooperation with the PRC that we cannot live with, and we have made that clear.
Well, towards that end, according to the Wall Street Journal, some defense officials say they believe China hopes to build a base in the Middle East, perhaps in the UAE. On a scale of 1 to 10, how problematic would it be if China were to establish a base in a country like the United Arab Emirates that is about to get some of our most sensitive defense equipment?
Thank you for that question. The current assessment is that China has a global strategy of pursuing military installations all over, including in the Middle East. It seeks to build installations, and the Middle East is one example, so that ultimately it can serve its own interests, not provide or enhance regional stability and security. So in any country with which we have a deep partnership, we talk about the risks to U.S. defense technology, to U.S. forces of a Chinese military installation. And I'll just add, in terms of whether or not China seeks to take over for the U.S. as the security guarantor of choice, what we actually view in a demonstrated pattern of how China engages with countries across the world, and we warn and discuss with our partners in the Middle East, that ultimately Chinese engagement in certain categories will violate their sovereignty, which they prioritize. And then I would note, when we were talking before about the Iran-supported UAV network or the Mercer Street, China was silent, both at the Security Council and in signing on to any statement. This is not a country, Beijing, that is going to support our partners in their legitimate security and defense concerns and needs, and we remind them of that.
Well, I hope our partners noticed that silence. Final two questions. First, on the missile technology control regime. This is a voluntary agreement, but one that we perceive to be very important to our global security interests. Prior to the Trump administration, we had interpreted that agreement as preventing us from selling certain armed drone technology to countries sort of outside our very closest partners. Thus far, the Biden administration has not reversed the Trump administration's reinterpretation of that treaty, and as you said at the outset, are pursuing the sale of Reaper drones to the United Arab Emirates. Do you expect other members of the MTCR to issue their own reinterpretations? And are we concerned about the proliferation of advanced armed drones to the Middle East? It sort of feels like we've just sort of given up on this one. We've just said there's so many countries selling so many advanced drones that we might as well just be in the business as well. I'm not convinced that that's the right argument here. We still are a moral pace setter around the world. So a minute or two on sort of how you perceive the health of MTCR today, and what you perceive to be the ways in which we can still try to lead a global conversation about the danger of the proliferation of armed drones. I think we have frankly lost a lot of our moral authority through the reinterpretation of that regime.
Thank you for that question, Senator. The Biden-Harris administration conducted a review of our UAS export policy, determined that we would maintain the decision to invoke national discretion on the implementation of our commitment to the MTCR, but that does not mean that the United States will automatically approve a UAS export. We will still conduct a case-by-case review. The non-proliferation factors that are identified in MTCR guidelines will continue to play a really important role. We'll consider the transfer's effect on U.S. national security interests, including human rights and other foreign policy objectives, as well as the recipient country's capability and their willingness to effectively, responsibly use this technology, and of course, to safeguard U.S. origin technology.
And finally, just a question on the sort of merits of escalatory versus de-escalatory policy. This town loves military escalation, makes a lot of people rich here. De-escalation is not as lucrative. I, over the years of meeting with the Iranian foreign ministry, I'm one of the few here that does, take everything they say with a giant shaker of salt. But I think there's some truth to one of the things they consistently say, which is that, you know, our missiles are primarily pointed at the Saudis. And every time you sell them more, every time you give them and the Emiratis more equipment and more lethality, more capability, we invest more in our own. What's our sort of overall thinking about, if our interest is in ultimately getting the Iranians to give up their ballistic missile program, how do we defend a continued buildup of arms on the other side of that contest for regional hegemony? What's our sort of current thinking on the benefits of arms escalation versus arms de-escalation?
Thank you for that question. It gives us an opportunity to reflect, as does the entire hearing, on some of the bigger picture issues. Security cooperation plays a really important role in our Middle East partnerships, but it is not the only answer. And so I would stress that our arms transfers, our security cooperation, are not going to be the answer, the magic bullet to as you said, to Saudi insecurity. They're not going to be the answer to instability in the region. That will come through diplomacy and through a political solution to the region's, unfortunately, many military conflicts. As I said in my opening statement, we rely on our partners to understand when there is no military solution to a conflict, and we will continue to stress that to them. And that is why you saw in the first days of the Biden-Harris administration that the president made sure to reinvigorate our diplomacy with Yemen, to appoint a special envoy, Tim Lenderking, to be able to reinvest in our diplomatic efforts.
Ms. Resnick, I'm gonna follow up with the chairman's indulgence.